During that time, I had a chance to debrief them. Why did they drive all the way from Cotton Country? Why were they interested in buying a used vehicle? Aren't farmers supposed to be frugal? It seems that this couple shops for a late model, quality used Japanese vehicle every 2 or 3 years. They find the prices and availability significantly better in the big city. They are nearly 150 miles from the nearest Acura dealer. They buy cars like mine and resell them in 2 or 3 years in their rural community for close to what they paid for them. Shopper 4 and her husband convinced me that they were frugal. They arrived with a certified check in an amount that was $1,000 less than my asking price. The farmer, upon returning from the test drive, asked his wife, "Aren't you going to try to negotiate with this guy?" She, in turn, said, "This fellow doesn't need to sell this car. And it's in great condition." Her husband agreed. Thereupon, she handed me the certified check and 10 $100 bills. After all the papers were signed and the deal was complete, she told me that my car sold for at least $3,000 more at the dealer nearest her farm. I responded that her colleagues would likely be impressed with this car when she drove up to school. On Monday, her husband commented that the other teachers would really be impressed if they knew how little she had paid for it. One comment he made was of particular interest to me. My wife works with a woman who drives a new, comparably equipped Mercedes-Benz. She leased it for 60 months, $600 per month. Do you know how much cotton you have to grow to make those payments? A Professor O.F. Thrift has UAWs for any GHBO. How did Dr. Bill, an engineering professor who never had a total household income of more than $80,000, become a millionaire? He inherited nothing. He never won the lottery or hired an investment advisor who turned a few thousand of his dollars into a fortune. His success in accumulating wealth is based on living well below his means. This professor is a classic example of a used vehicle-prone shopper. But, like most of those in this buyer group, he never neglected his family. He provided funds for his children's college tuitions in full and more. He and his family live in a fine home in an upper-middle-class neighborhood. In fact, about 80% of his group live in homes valued at $300,000 to $500,000. Dr. Bill's goal always was to become financially independent, but he never wanted to become an entrepreneur. Often, entrepreneurs become wealthy by taking substantial risks and by leveraging the labor and talent of dozens, even hundreds of others. Dr. Bill was never cut out to be anything but a professor. He is not alone. Most people in this town are not the entrepreneurial type. But this does not mean that they can't become millionaires. People often confuse our message about the relationship between being wealthy and being an entrepreneur. We're not telling people to give up doing their own thing in medicine, law, accounting, and other occupations and join the ranks of the entrepreneurs in this country. Don't even consider such a change unless you really want to and are fully capable of succeeding. If you can generate a reasonably good income, say, twice the norm for households in America, or $65,000 to $7,000, then you may become wealthy one day if you follow the defensive strategy developed by millionaires who are used vehicle-prone shoppers. Most of Dr. Bill's non-millionaire neighbors have no household budget. They do no consumption planning. As a result, they have no restrictions on their domestic expenditures except the upper limits of their income. Yet these are the very types who are prone to whisper criticisms about frugal neighbors such as Dr. Bill. Mr. Norman is an executive who lives in a $400,000 home in Dr. Bill's neighborhood. His household income last year was in excess of $150,000. But he has next to zero invested in anything other than home equity, motor vehicles, and a corporate pension plan. Mr. Norman's household has a net worth of under $200,000. Mr. Norman and his wife are each 50 years old. So are their neighbors, the used vehi. CLE-prone shopper, Dr. Bill, and his wife. Bill earns only about half of what the Normans earn, but Bill's household has a net worth that is 9 times greater than the Normans. Can this be possible? It's more than possible. It is probable and predictable. Great offense and poor defense translate into underaccumulation of wealth. But the Normans are not alone. There are many more underaccumulators in their neighborhood than there are prodigious accumulators like Dr. Bill and his family. UAWs like the Normans find it degrading to even think about shopping for a used car. To them, a used car is out of the question. Their neighbor, Dr. Bill, never felt degraded shopping for quality used cars. In fact, acquiring used cream puffs gives him great satisfaction. Over the years, he figures that he has saved enough buying used over new to completely fund one of his children's college and graduate school tuitions. Where did Dr. Bill buy his latest motor vehicle, a 3-year-old BMW 5 Series? From Gary, a high-income, hyper-consuming sales professional employed in the high-tech field. Gary buys only new foreign motor vehicles. If Gary is like most UAWs, he firmly believes that the buyer of his old 5 Series BMW is not as financially well off as he. This is one of the telltale symptoms of being a UAW. UAWs usually think they have more wealth than their neighbors. Many UAWs also believe that people drive the best they can afford. Think of the situation in another way. Gary, the underaccumulator of wealth, is subsidizing Dr. Bill's motor vehicle purchases. Gary takes the brunt of the 3-year depreciation and then transfers title of a fine automobile to Dr. Bill, the frugal millionaire. Also, since Gary is an employee, he cannot write off depreciation against his income tax liability. In addition, Gary has no friends, relatives, or clients in the motor vehicle business. He gets no tax write-offs, no super discounts from an uncle or aunt who owns a dealership, and no reciprocity from a client customer who is in the automobile business. He consumes motor vehicles purely for pleasure. What should Gary, Mr. Norman, and others of the UAW variety know? That they spend more for motor vehicles than the typical American millionaire. Gary's earned income is equal to that of many millionaires, yet Gary isn't a millionaire. Perhaps he compensates for this through his heavy consumption of status products. Is he trying to emulate the driving and buying habits of the chairman of the company that employs him? But the chairman is a millionaire and owns equity in the corporation. Unlike Gary, he never purchased an expensive automobile until after he was wealthy. Instead, he put much of his income back into the company via stock purchases. In contrast, Gary makes his expensive purchases in anticipation of becoming wealthy. But that day is unlikely to ever arrive. ECONOMICOUTPATIENTCARE. Their parents did not provide economic outpatient care. Dear Dr. Stanley and Dr. Danko, I just finished reading an article about your research on millionaires. My wife has an overdue trust that her parents won't release. My mother-in-law keeps putting us off with paperwork. She seems determined not ever to release the trust to my wife. Is it possible that you have come in contact with my wife's family in your research? Her name is. Or perhaps you could suggest mother source that would tell us how much is in the trust. You, Mr. L. S. The author of this letter and his wife urgently need money. The writer, we will call him Lamar, is the husband of a woman. We will refer to her as Mary, who comes from a wealthy family. Mary receives more than $15,000 in cash gifts annually from her parents. She has received gifts of this type as well as other forms of help since she and Lamar got married nearly 30 years ago. Today she and her husband are in their early 50s. They live in a Splendid neighborhood in a fine home. They are country club MEM. Bears. Both love to play tennis and golf. Both drive imported luxury cars. They wear fine clothes and are socially involved with several non-profit organizations. They were previously active in raising money for the private schools their children attended. Both enjoy vintage wines, gourmet foods, entertaining, high-quality jewelry, and foreign travel. Their neighbors think Lamar and Mary are wealthy. Some are firmly convinced that they are multi-millionaires. But looks can be deceiving. They are not wealthy. Do they at least earn a high income? No, neither. The husband nor the wife earns a high income. Mary is a housewife. Lamar is an administrator at the local college. Never in the couple's long marriage have the two ever had an earned annual income in excess of $60,000, even though they have a lifestyle similar to those with incomes of at least twice theirs. Some may suggest that this couple does an outstanding job of budgeting and planning. How else can they live so high with so few dollars of income? But Lamar and Mary have never put a budget plan together in all the years they've been married. They spend in excess of their income every year. They also spend all the money Mary receives from her parents. In short, Mary and Lamar are able to live so lavishly because they are the recipients of what we call economic outpatient care, EOC. Economic outpatient care refers to the substantial economic gifts and acts of kindness some parents give their adult children and grandchildren. This chapter will explore the implications of economic outpatient care and how it affects the lives of those who give it and those who receive it. EOC. Many of today's distributors of EOC demonstrated significant skill at accumulating wealth earlier in their lives. They are generally frugal with regard to their own consumption and lifestyle, but some are not nearly as frugal when it comes to providing their children and grandchildren with acts of kindness. These parents feel compelled, even obligated, to provide economic support for their adult children and their families. What's the result of this largesse? Those parents who provide certain forms of EOC have significantly less wealth than those parents within the same age, income, and occupational cohorts whose adult children are economically independent. And, in general, the more dollars adult children receive, the fewer they accumulate, while those who are given fewer dollars accumulate more. Distributors of EOC often conclude that their adult children could not maintain a middle or upper middle class high consumption lifestyle without being subsidized. Consequently, an increasing number of families headed by the sons and daughters of the affluent are playing the role of successful members of the high-income producing upper middle class. Yet their lifestyle is a facade. These sons and daughters of the affluent are high-volume consumers of status products and services from their traditional colonial homes in upscale suburbs to their imported luxury motor vehicles. From their country club affiliations to the private schools they select for their children, they are living proof of one simple rule regarding EOC. It is much easier to spend other people's money than dollars that are self-generated. EOC is widespread in America. More than 46% of the affluent in America give at least $15,000 worth of EOC annually to their adult children and/or grandchildren. Nearly half the adult children of the affluent who are under 35 years of age receive annual cash gifts from their parents. The incidence of giving declines as adult children grow older. About 1 in 5 adult children in their mid-40s to mid-50s receive such gifts. Please note that these estimates are based on surveys of the adult children of the affluent and that gift receivers are likely to understate both the incidence and size of their gifts. Interestingly, when surveyed, gift givers report a substantially higher incidence and dollar amount of gift giving than their adult children who are the recipients. Much EOC is distributed in lump sums or erratic patterns. For example, affluent parents and grandparents are likely to give their children run entire coin collections, stamp collections, and similar gifts in one transfer. About 1 in 4 affluent parents has already given such collections to his or her adult children or grandchildren. Similarly, payment of medical and dental expenses is often precipitated by a grandchild's need for orthodontal work or plastic surgery. About 45% of the affluent have provided for the Medicare dental expenses of their adult children and/or grandchildren. During the next 10 years, the affluent population in America, defined as those with a net worth of $1 million or more, will increase 5 to 7 times faster than the household population in general. Directly paralleling this growth, the affluent population will produce significantly more children and grandchildren than in the past. Nomic outpatient care will increase greatly during this period.